They arrive wrapped in tears, clutching worn teddy bears, standing lost at the edge of everything they've ever known. When a heartbroken single father stumbled upon three identical girls sobbing alone at their mother's graveside, he had no idea his own shattered world was about to be rebuilt by tiny hands and whispered prayers. This isn't just a story about loss becoming love. It's about how the most broken souls can become each other's salvation, how strangers can become family in the span of a heartbeat, and how three little girls would transform one man's daily struggle into his greatest blessing. What started as a moment of compassion on the worst day of their lives became a journey that would redefine everything they thought they knew about home, hope, and healing. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The autumn rain fell like unspoken goodbyes across the quiet cemetery of Millbrook Heights, each droplet carrying the weight of sorrow that seemed to settle into the very bones of the earth. It was the kind of day that made the world feel smaller, more fragile, as if one wrong step could shatter everything that remained whole. Ryan Collins gripped the steering wheel of his weathered Honda Civic, knuckles white against the cracked leather, as he navigated the winding cemetery roads. His 8-year-old son, Danny, sat silently in the passenger seat, staring out at the endless rows of headstones that stretched across the rolling hills like a stone garden of memory. They had just left another appointment with the school counselor. Danny's grades were slipping again, and the nightmares that had plagued him since his mother's accident 2 years ago showed no signs of fading. Ryan had run out of answers. Run out of hope, run out of everything except the stubborn determination to keep moving forward for his son's sake. The counselor had suggested grief support groups, family therapy, maybe even medication. But Ryan knew what Danny needed wasn't found in prescription bottles or clinical offices. His boy needed what they both needed, something Ryan wasn't sure existed anymore: peace, wholeness. A reason to believe that tomorrow could be different from yesterday. As they drove past the newer section of the cemetery, Ryan's attention was caught by a small gathering near a freshly covered grave. A modest funeral service was concluding, the last mourners dispersing slowly into the grey afternoon. But something made him slow the car, made him look more carefully at the scene unfolding before them. That's when he saw them. 3 small figures, identical in every way, stood huddled together beside the grave like lost sparrows in a storm. Triplet girls, couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old, wearing matching black dresses that hung too loose on their thin frames. Their dark hair was pulled back in careful braids, but strands had escaped and clung to their tear-stained cheeks. Each clutched something precious. One held a faded stuffed elephant, another gripped a small wooden music box, and the third pressed a handmade photo frame against her chest, as if it contained her entire world. The last of the mourners was walking away, leaving the 3 girls standing alone in the drizzling rain. No adult approached them, no guardian stepped forward to gather them up and take them home. They simply stood there, lost and forgotten, while the cemetery workers began their solemn task of cleaning up after the service. Ryan pulled over, his heart hammering against his ribs. Something was terribly wrong with this picture. These weren't just mourning relatives, these were abandoned souls, left to navigate the impossible weight of grief entirely alone. "Dad?" Danny's voice was barely a whisper. "Why are those girls just standing there?" Ryan stared through the rain-streaked windshield, watching as one of the triplets, the one with the music box, began to sob quietly, her small shoulders shaking with the force of her tears. The other 2 moved closer to her, forming a protective circle of shared sorrow that broke something deep inside Ryan's chest. "I don't know, buddy," he said, already unbuckling his seatbelt, "but I'm going to find out." He stepped out into the cold autumn air, each breath visible in small puffs of vapor. The cemetery was almost empty now, except for the groundskeepers and these 3 forgotten souls who seemed to have nowhere else in the world to go. Ryan approached slowly, carefully, the way you might approach a wounded animal, with infinite gentleness and respect for their pain. "Hey there," he called softly when he was still several feet away, not wanting to startle them. "Are you girls okay?" 3 pairs of identical brown eyes turned toward him, wide with uncertainty and exhaustion. The girl with the photo frame stepped slightly in front of her sisters, a protective instinct that spoke of someone who had learned too young that the world wasn't always safe. "We're waiting," she said in a voice that sounded far older than her. "Years. Mama said someone would come for us." Ryan's heart dropped into his stomach. He looked around the empty cemetery, at the maintenance crew packing up their equipment, at the darkening sky that promised more rain. No one was coming. These girls had been left behind, abandoned at their mother's grave like forgotten flowers. "How long have you been waiting?" he asked gently. The girl with the stuffed elephant looked up at her sister, then back at Ryan. "Since they put Mama in the ground," she whispered. That had been hours ago. These babies had been standing in the rain, waiting for rescue that wasn't coming, clinging to each other and the few precious things they had left of their mother. Ryan felt something shift inside him, something that had been dormant since his own wife's death, a fierce protective instinct that had nothing to do with logic and everything to do with love. "What are your names?" he asked, crouching down to their level. "I'm Grace," said the one with the photo frame. "This is Faith," she gestured to the girl with the music box. "And that's Hope." The 3rd sister with the elephant raised her hand. In a tiny wave, Grace, Faith, and Hope. Even their names seemed like a message from somewhere beyond the rain and sorrow. Ryan looked back at Danny, who had gotten out of the car and was watching with wide, curious eyes. His son, who had been drowning in his own grief for 2 years, who had forgotten how to smile, who woke up screaming from nightmares about car accidents and empty houses. And then Ryan looked at these 3 little girls who had just lost everything, who were waiting for someone, anyone, to remember they existed. In that moment, standing in a cemetery on a grey October afternoon, Ryan Collins made a decision that would change all their lives forever. Ryan Collins hadn't planned on becoming a single father at 32. Hell, he hadn't planned on most things that had shaped his life over the past 2 years. But life, as he'd learned with brutal clarity, had a way of writing its own script, regardless of what you thought you'd signed up for. The small apartment on Maple Street bore the marks of a man trying to hold everything together with duct tape and determination. Dishes sat in the sink longer than they should have, laundry piled up in corners like fabric mountains, and Danny's school papers were scattered across the kitchen table in various states of completion. It wasn't dirty exactly, but it carried the exhausted energy of someone who was perpetually 3 steps behind on everything that mattered. Ryan worked the morning shift at Henderson's Auto Repair, a job that paid just enough to keep them afloat, but not enough to provide any cushion for emergencies. Every month was a careful dance of priorities. Rent first, utilities second, groceries third, and everything else got squeezed into whatever was left over. Danny's school supplies came from the dollar store. Their meals were heavy on pasta and light on fresh vegetables, and Ryan's own clothes hadn't been replaced in over a year. But it was the invisible weight that really wore him down. The constant vigilance required to keep Danny's world stable when Ryan's own foundation felt like it was built on quicksand. Every morning started with the same routine. Wake up 20 minutes before the alarm went out of habit, check on Danny, who often ended up in Ryan's bed sometime during the night after another nightmare. Make breakfast that neither of them really tasted and try to project a confidence he didn't feel. Danny's mother, Sarah, had been the organized one. She had kept color-coded calendars, remembered parent-teacher conferences, and somehow made their modest income stretch to cover everything they needed and most of what they wanted. She had been Danny's homework helper, bedtime story reader, and the one who knew exactly what to say when their boy was scared or sad or confused about the complicated world around him. Ryan tried his best to fill those roles, but he felt like an understudy who had been thrust on stage without ever learning. His lines: he could change oil and rebuild engines with his eyes closed, but when Danny asked why mommy had to die or why bad things happened to good people, Ryan found himself fumbling for answers that never seemed adequate. The nightmares had started about 6 months after Sarah's accident. Danny would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, calling for his mother, who would never answer again. Ryan would hold him until the shaking stopped, but he never knew what to say in those dark moments when grief felt bigger than both of them combined. The school counselor said it was normal, part of the process, but normal didn't make it any easier to watch his son suffer. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Danny had been an outgoing, curious kid before the accident. He'd played soccer, participated in school plays, and made friends easily. Now he was quiet, withdrawn, content to spend hours building elaborate structures with his Legos while the neighborhood kids played outside. His grades had dropped from A's and B's to C's and D's, not because he wasn't smart, but because he couldn't seem to concentrate on anything for more than a few minutes at a time. The parent-teacher conferences were the worst. Ryan would sit in those tiny plastic chairs, listening to well-meaning educators explain how Danny was struggling to adjust and needed additional support structures. They spoke in careful, professional language that somehow made everything sound both clinical and hopeless at the same time. Ryan always nodded and agreed to whatever interventions they suggested, but deep down he knew that what Danny needed couldn't be found in any educational program or therapeutic technique. His son needed what Ryan couldn't give him: the assurance that the world was safe, that the people you loved wouldn't suddenly disappear, that tomorrow would be better than today. How could Ryan promise those things when he didn't believe them himself? The loneliness was perhaps the hardest part. Ryan had friends from work, guys he could grab a beer with occasionally when he could afford both the beer and a babysitter. But none of them really understood what it was like to be solely responsible for another human being's emotional well-being, while your own world felt like it was held together with prayer and stubbornness. Sunday afternoons were the worst. Those long, empty hours when other families were having barbecues or going to parks or doing the kinds of things that required two parents and a sense of security that Ryan couldn't manufacture no matter how hard he tried. He and Danny would end up on the couch, watching movies they'd both seen a dozen times, neither one acknowledging that they were both just waiting for Monday to arrive so they'd have something to do again. Ryan had developed his own coping mechanisms, most of which involved staying busy enough that he didn't have time to think about everything he'd lost. He fixed things: cars, appliances, anything that would let him use his hands and focus on problems that actually had solutions. There was something deeply satisfying about diagnosing an issue, gathering the right tools, and methodically working until the problem was solved. If only grief worked the same way. The financial pressure was constant, but manageable. Barely. Sarah had had a small life insurance policy that covered the funeral expenses and bought them about 6 months of breathing room. But that cushion was long gone now, and every unexpected expense, Danny's school field trip, a blown tire, an emergency room visit for strep throat, sent Ryan into a panic about how they'd make ends meet. He'd grown used to lying awake at night, calculating and recalculating their monthly budget, trying to figure out where he could trim another $20 so Danny could go to his friend's birthday party or buy the book for his school reading program. Ryan had gotten good at finding creative solutions, generic brand everything, coupon clipping, shopping at thrift stores. But there was only so much you could stretch a paycheck before it snapped entirely. Still, they managed. Day by day, week by week, month by month, they found a way to keep moving forward. It wasn't the life Ryan had planned, and it wasn't the childhood he'd wanted for Danny, but it was theirs. Imperfect, uncertain, held together by love and sheer determination. What Ryan didn't know as he drove through that cemetery on that grey October afternoon was that everything was about to change. That three little girls standing in the rain would transform not just their living situation, but the very definition of what family could mean. Sometimes salvation arrives when you're not even looking for it, disguised as someone else's crisis, wrapped in the kind of need that calls to the deepest parts of who you are. The rain had intensified, turning from a gentle drizzle into a steady downpour that drummed against the cemetery's ancient oak trees and sent rivulets of water cascading down the weathered headstones. Ryan stood there in the growing storm, his jacket already soaked through, staring at three of the most heartbreaking sights he'd ever witnessed. Grace, Faith, and Hope. Their names felt like a cruel irony given their current circumstances. Triplets couldn't have been more than 7 years old, but they carried themselves with the weight of people who had seen too much, lost too much, been forced to grow up too fast. Their identical faces were streaked with tears and rain, their matching black funeral dresses now clinging to their small frames as the October wind whipped through the cemetery. "Girls," Ryan said gently, his voice barely audible above the rainfall, "how long ago did your mama tell you someone would come?" Grace, clearly the appointed spokesperson for the trio, looked down at the fresh grave where a simple headstone read, "Sophia Martinez, beloved mother, gone too soon." Her grip tightened on the photo frame pressed against her chest. Ryan could see it contained a picture of a beautiful young woman with the same dark eyes as her daughters. "This morning," Grace whispered, "before the sickness got too bad, she said her friend Harper would come get us after they put her to sleep forever." Ryan's heart sank. Harper, whoever she was, hadn't shown up. These girls had been abandoned at their mother's funeral, left to stand vigil in the rain while the rest of the world moved on without them. He looked around the cemetery once more, hoping against hope that someone would appear, that this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. But the grounds were empty, except for the maintenance crew who were packing up their equipment and preparing to leave. "Do you know Harper's last name?" Ryan asked, "or where she lives?" The three girls exchanged glances, and Faith, the one clutching the music box, shook her head. "Mama just said Harper. She worked with Mama at the flower shop downtown." Ryan pulled out his phone, rain spattering the screen as he quickly searched for flower shops in their area. There were 3 within a 10-mile radius. He could call them, try to track down this Harper person, but that could take hours. And these girls couldn't stand out here in this weather for hours. Danny had moved closer, staying just behind Ryan, but clearly captivated by the triplets. He'd been so withdrawn lately, so isolated in his own grief, but something about these girls seemed to spark a protective instinct Ryan hadn't seen in his son for months. "Dad," Danny said quietly, tugging on Ryan's wet jacket sleeve. They're shivering. Ryan looked more closely and realized Danny was right. Despite their brave faces, all 3 girls were trembling, whether from cold, fear, or shock, he couldn't tell. Probably all 3. Their lips had taken on a bluish tint, and Hope, the smallest one with the stuffed elephant, was swaying slightly on her feet. "Girls, listen to me," Ryan said, crouching down to their eye level again. "We need to get you somewhere warm and dry while we figure out how to find Harper. My name is Ryan, and this is my son Danny. We live just a few miles from here. Grace's eyes widened with suspicion. Mama said never go with strangers. Your mama was absolutely right, Ryan replied, understanding the impossible position these girls were in. But look around, sweetheart. There's nobody else here. The cemetery is closing, and you can't stay out in this storm. As if to emphasize his point, a crack of thunder rolled across the sky, followed by a flash of lightning that lit up the darkening afternoon. Hope let out a small whimper and pressed closer to her sisters. What if Harper comes back and we're not here? Faith asked, her voice barely audible above the rain. Ryan felt something twist in his chest. These girls were clinging to hope that someone was coming for them, but he'd seen enough of the world to recognize abandonment when he saw it. If Harper had intended to collect these girls, she would have been here hours ago. The funeral had clearly ended, the mourners had dispersed, and no one had given a second thought to 3 orphaned sisters standing alone in the rain. "I'll leave a note," Ryan said, pulling a soggy receipt from his pocket and borrowing a pen from the cemetery groundskeeper who was walking past. "I'll put our phone number and address right here on your mama's flowers. If Harper comes looking, she'll know exactly where to find you." He wrote quickly, trying to shield the paper from the worst of the rain. Grace, Faith, and Hope are safe with Ryan Collins, 847 Maple Street, Millbrook Heights. Call 555-0147. He wedged the note securely among the funeral flowers, hoping it would survive the storm. The girls watched this process with the careful attention of people who had learned that adults' promises often fell through. But something in Ryan's methodical approach, his genuine concern for their fears, seemed to ease their resistance slightly. "Will you take us back here tomorrow?" Grace asked. "In case Harper comes then?" "Absolutely," Ryan promised, and he meant it. "First thing in the morning if you want." Danny stepped forward then, surprising everyone. "You can sit in the back with me," he offered quietly. "The heat works really good in our car." It was the first time in months that Ryan had seen his son actively try to comfort someone else. The simple act of witnessing someone else's pain seemed to have awakened something in Danny that had been dormant since his mother's death. The instinct to help, to care, to connect. Care to connect. Grace looked at her sisters, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but just until Harper comes." As they walked toward Ryan's car, Hope stumbled slightly, her exhaustion finally overtaking her determination to stay strong. Without thinking, Ryan scooped her up, feeling how light she was, how fragile. She didn't protest, just laid her head against his shoulder and closed her eyes. Faith and Grace flanked Danny as they made their way across the cemetery parking lot, all of them moving carefully over the wet pavement. When they reached the car, Ryan gently placed Hope in the middle of the back seat, then helped Faith and Grace climb in on either side of her. As he started the engine and turned the heat up full blast, Ryan caught a glimpse of the 4 young people in his rearview mirror, his son and 3 strangers who had somehow, in the span of 20 minutes, become his responsibility. Danny was showing Grace how to adjust the air vents, while Faith was carefully opening her music box and letting a soft, tinkling melody fill the car. Ryan had no idea what he was doing. He had no plan, no experience with traumatized children beyond his own son, no resources to handle this kind of crisis. But as he pulled out of the cemetery parking lot and headed toward home, one thing was absolutely clear. He couldn't drive. Away from those 3 little girls, standing alone in the rain. Sometimes the most important decisions in life aren't made with careful consideration and lengthy deliberation. Sometimes they're made in an instant in a cemetery parking lot, when your heart recognizes something your head hasn't processed yet. Ryan Collins was about to discover that opening your door to strangers in need doesn't just change their story, it rewrites your own in ways you never could have imagined. The drive from Millbrook Cemetery to Ryan's apartment on Maple Street took exactly 12 minutes. but it felt like crossing into an entirely different universe. The silence in the car was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that settled over people who had just experienced something profound and were still processing what it meant. Ryan kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching, as Danny quietly shared his emergency granola bar with Faith, breaking it into careful pieces so each of the triplets could have some. Hope had fallen asleep against Grace's shoulder, her stuffed elephant clutched tightly in her small arms, while Grace stared out the rain-streaked window with the watchful alertness of someone who had learned too young that safety was temporary. When they pulled into the narrow parking lot behind the brick apartment building, Ryan felt a sudden wave of self-consciousness about his living situation. The building was old but well-maintained, the kind of place where working families lived when they were doing their best but weren't quite getting ahead. His second-floor unit had 2 bedrooms, 1 small bathroom, and a living area that served as both kitchen and family room. It was clean and functional, but it certainly wasn't equipped for unexpected guests, especially not 3 traumatized little girls who had just lost their mother. "This is where we live," Danny announced as they climbed the narrow staircase, his voice carrying a note of pride that surprised Ryan. "Dad fixed all the squeaky steps himself." Grace looked up at Ryan with something that might have been respect. "You know how to fix things?" "Cars, mostly," Ryan replied, fishing his keys from his wet pocket. "But squeaky steps, leaky faucets, stuff like that, I can usually figure it out." The apartment felt smaller than usual, with 5 people crowded into the entryway, dripping rainwater onto the worn linoleum. Ryan grabbed towels from the linen closet, handing them out while cranking up the thermostat. The girls stood close together, taking in their surroundings with the careful assessment of people who had learned to evaluate every new situation for potential threats or comforts. "Are you hungry?" Ryan asked, realizing that none of them had, probably eaten since early morning. Let me see what we have." He opened the refrigerator and took inventory. Leftover spaghetti, some questionable lunch meat, a carton of milk that would expire tomorrow, and the ingredients for grilled cheese sandwiches. "Not exactly a feast, but it would have to do. I can make grilled cheese," he offered, "and tomato soup from the can." Faith's eyes lit up slightly. "Mama used to make grilled cheese when we were sad." The comment hung in the air, a reminder of everything these girls had lost, everything they were trying to navigate without their anchor in the world. Ryan felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, not just the immediate practical concerns of feeding and sheltering them, but the emotional complexity of helping them process their grief while managing his own limited resources. "Danny, can you show the girls where the bathroom is?" Ryan asked, "and maybe find some dry clothes they can borrow while theirs are drying." As the kids disappeared down the hallway, Ryan allowed himself a moment to fully absorb what had just happened. 3 hours ago, his biggest worry had been whether Danny's math homework was getting done and how they'd afford new winter coats. Now he was harboring 3 orphaned children with no legal authority, no plan, and no idea what he was supposed to do next. He pulled out his phone and did a quick internet search for what to do when you find abandoned children. The results were overwhelming and mostly unhelpful. Pages about legal obligations, child protective services, emergency foster care procedures. All of it seemed to assume you were dealing with a clear-cut situation where the proper authorities could be contacted and everything would be handled through official channels. But this wasn't clear-cut. These girls weren't randomly abandoned. They were waiting for someone named Harper who might still show up. Calling CPS immediately felt like a betrayal of their trust, but keeping them without proper authority could land him in serious legal trouble. Danny appeared back in the kitchen, having changed into dry clothes. "They're really little, Dad, like smaller than I was when I was their age." "What do you mean?" Faith asked if we had any food that wasn't too hard to chew because Hope's lost some teeth, and Grace said they haven't eaten much lately because Mama was too sick to cook. The pieces were starting to come together, painting a picture of a young, single mother who had been battling illness while trying to care for triplets, a family that had been struggling even before tragedy struck. Ryan felt a familiar ache in his chest, the recognition of people doing their best with impossible circumstances, the kind of situation where there were no good options, only degrees of difficulty. The girls emerged from the bathroom wearing Danny's old t-shirts, which hung on them like dresses. Grace had braided Faith's hair, and Hope was carrying her elephant and Danny's old stuffed bear, which he must have given her. They looked fragile and resilient at the same time, like flowers that had survived a harsh winter. The clothes are really big, Grace observed, but she was almost smiling. That's okay, Danny said seriously. When my mom died, I wore Dad's shirts for a while because they smelled like home. Ryan froze, his hand halfway to the soup can. Danny rarely mentioned Sarah directly, and never with such matter-of-fact acceptance. But something about these girls' situations seemed to have unlocked a part of his son that had been buried under grief and confusion. Your mom died too? Faith asked quietly. Danny nodded. In a car accident. It was really scary for a long time. Are you still scared? Hope whispered. Danny considered this seriously. Sometimes, but not as much as before. Dad says it's okay to be scared as long as you don't let it stop you from doing good stuff. Ryan had never heard his son articulate that particular piece of wisdom, though he supposed it was something he might have said during one of their late-night conversations about grief and moving forward. It was strange and wonderful to hear his own attempts at comfort reflected back through Danny's understanding. As they settled around the small kitchen table with grilled cheese sandwiches and steaming bowls of tomato soup, Ryan found himself studying the scene with amazement. Just hours ago, this table had felt too big for just him and Danny, a constant reminder of Sarah's empty chair. Now it was crowded and alive with quiet conversation and the comfortable sounds of people sharing a meal. Grace ate slowly, methodically, like someone who had learned to make food last. Faith hummed softly between bites, the same melody that had played from her music box in the car. Hope alternated between spoonfuls of soup and whispered conversations with her elephant, including the stuffed animal in every aspect of the meal. This is really good, Grace said, and Ryan could tell she meant it. Thank you for sharing with us, Faith added politely. It occurred to Ryan that these girls had been raised with beautiful manners, that their mother had clearly invested in teaching them kindness and gratitude even while struggling with illness and single parenthood. They were good kids, scared, grieving, and displaced, but fundamentally good. After dinner, Ryan tried calling the local flower shops, but none of them had an employee named Harper, and none recognized the name Sophia Martinez. As the evening wore on, it became increasingly clear that finding Harper wasn't going to be a simple matter of making a few phone calls. What happens now? Grace asked as Ryan hung up from the third unsuccessful call. Ryan looked at her serious little face, at Faith, who was winding her music box again, at Hope, who had fallen asleep in Danny's lap while he read to her from one of his old picture books. He thought about proper procedures and legal obligations, and all the reasons why what he was about to say might be the wrong choice. But sometimes the right thing to do isn't found in procedural manuals or legal guidelines. Sometimes it's found in the simple recognition that people need help, and you have the ability to provide it. You're going to stay here tonight, Ryan said quietly. Tomorrow we'll keep looking for Harper, and we'll figure out the next steps. But right now, you're safe, you're fed, and you're not alone. Grace nodded solemnly, as if this arrangement made perfect sense to her 7-year-old logic. What Ryan didn't realize, as he made up sleeping arrangements and found extra pillows, was that this decision, made from compassion rather than careful planning, was about to transform not just one night, but the entire trajectory of all their lives. Ryan woke up at 5:47 a.m. to the sound of whispered voices coming from the living room. For a moment, he was disoriented. It had been 2 years since anyone other than Danny had been in his apartment overnight, and the unfamiliar sounds of multiple people moving around pulled him from sleep with a start. Then he remembered Grace, Faith, and Hope. The triplets from the cemetery, the girls who were supposed to be temporary guests, but who had somehow, in the span of 12 hours, made his small apartment feel more alive than it had since Sarah's death. He padded quietly down the hallway and found all 4 young people arranged around the coffee table in the dim morning light. Danny was showing the girls how to fold paper airplanes, speaking in the kind of patient, instructional tone Ryan recognized from Sarah's interactions with their son. Grace was attempting to replicate Danny's precise folds, while Faith hummed softly and Hope watched with wide-eyed fascination. "Morning," Ryan said softly, not wanting to break the spell of their concentration. "Dad!" Danny looked up with more enthusiasm than Ryan had seen from him in months. "I'm teaching them how to make the kind that can fly really far. Grace is really good at following directions." Grace beamed at the compliment, and Ryan noticed that she had carefully arranged her clothes from yesterday, now dry, on one end of the couch, along with Faith's and Hope's things. Everything was folded neatly, organized with the kind of precision that spoke of someone who had learned early that taking care of belongings was important when you didn't have much. "Are you girls hungry?" Ryan asked. "I can make pancakes if you want." "Real pancakes?" Faith asked, her voice filled with wonder. "Like from scratch?" "From a box mix," Ryan admitted, "but they taste real enough." As he moved around the kitchen, mixing batter and heating the griddle, Ryan found himself acutely aware of how different the morning felt. Usually, it was just him and Danny moving through their routine in comfortable but slightly melancholy silence. Breakfast, backpack check, quick review of the day's schedule. Now the apartment buzzed with quiet activity and the kind of background chatter that made everything feel more purposeful. Hope appeared at his elbow, still clutching her elephant, but also carrying Danny's old stuffed bear. "Can elephant and bear help make breakfast? I think they'd be excellent supervisors," Ryan said seriously, lifting her up so she could see the pancakes bubbling on the griddle. "What do you think? Are they ready to flip?" Hope studied the pancakes with the intense concentration of a professional chef. "Elephant says yes, but Bear thinks we should wait a little more." "Bear's probably right," Ryan agreed, and Hope giggled, the first genuine laugh he'd heard from any of the triplets. Over breakfast, the girls began to open up in small increments. Grace mentioned that they had lived in a small apartment across town with their mother, who worked at Martinez Flowers downtown. Faith talked about the music box, which had belonged to their grandmother and played their mother's favorite lullaby. Hope demonstrated how her elephant could dance to the music, a performance that earned applause from Danny and gentle smiles from her sisters. "Mama was sick for a long time," Grace said quietly, spreading syrup carefully across her pancakes. "She tried to find someone to take care of us if something happened, but most people already had too many kids." The comment hit Ryan like a physical blow. Sophia Martinez had been trying to arrange care for her daughters, knowing she was dying, but had been unable to find anyone willing or able to take on triplets. The thought of a dying mother desperately searching for someone to love her children after she was gone was almost too heartbreaking to process. "What about your family?" Ryan asked gently. "Grandparents, aunts, uncles?" Faith shook her head. "Mama said her family was far away in another state, and they didn't approve of her having babies without being married. Daddy's family. We don't know who Daddy is." The picture was becoming clearer and more devastating. A young, single mother, estranged from her family, raising triplets alone while battling a terminal illness. No wonder Harper, whoever she was, had failed to show up. The responsibility of taking on 3 grieving, traumatized little girls was enormous, even for someone who had promised to help. After breakfast, Ryan called into work and explained that he had a family emergency and needed the day off. His supervisor, Mr. Henderson, was understanding. Ryan had never missed work for anything less than Danny's serious illness, and his reliability had earned him some flexibility when he really needed it. "We should go back to the cemetery," Grace said as Ryan hung up the phone, "to check if Harper came." Ryan's heart sank, but he nodded. These girls needed to see for themselves that Harper wasn't coming before they could begin to accept help from other sources. "Of course. We can stop by the flower shop too, see if anyone there knows how to reach her." The drive back to Millbrook Cemetery felt different in daylight. The storm had passed, leaving the October air crisp and bright. The kind of weather that made everything look sharper and more hopeful. But when they arrived at Sophia Martinez's grave, the note Ryan had left was still there, soggy but readable, and there was no sign that anyone had been looking for the girls. Grace stared at the undisturbed flowers for a long moment, then turned to Ryan with the kind of mature acceptance that no 7-year-old should have to develop. "Harper's not coming, is she?" Ryan knelt down beside her. "I don't think so, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups want to help but can't figure out how, or life gets in the way of their good intentions. Like when Mama wanted to get better but couldn't," Faith said quietly. "Exactly like that." They visited Martinez Flowers next, a small shop in the historic downtown district that smelled like roses and fresh earth. The elderly owner, Mrs. Chen, remembered Sophia fondly, but confirmed that no one named Harper had ever worked there. However, she did remember Sophia mentioning a friend from her apartment complex who had promised to help with the girls if needed. "Harper Williams," Mrs. Chen said, checking through a small address book. "Lives in the Oakwood Apartments, I think. Sweet girl, but she's got her own troubles. Just had a baby and her husband lost his job last month." The mystery of Harper was solved, but the solution wasn't comforting. A young mother dealing with her own crisis, unable to take on the additional responsibility she had promised. It was the kind of situation where everyone was doing their best, but circumstances made good intentions impossible to fulfill. That evening, after unsuccessful attempts to reach Harper Williams and conversations with 2 different social service agencies that were either closed for the day or had waiting lists for initial consultations, Ryan found himself back in the familiar position of making dinner for 5 people instead of 2, but this time it didn't feel overwhelming. Grace set the table without being asked, arranging mismatched plates and cups with careful attention to making everything look nice. Faith helped Danny with his homework, her patient explanations somehow more effective than Ryan's frustrated attempts to explain long division. Hope played quietly in the corner, creating elaborate scenarios with her elephant, Danny's bear, and a collection of blocks that she had organized into what appeared to be a small town. "They're good kids," Danny observed as he and Ryan did dishes together. "Really good kids." Ryan nodded, watching the triplets through the kitchen doorway. They were tired, obviously still grieving, but they had spent the day being polite, helpful, and remarkably resilient. They hadn't complained about the uncertainty of their situation, hadn't demanded more attention than he could give, hadn't created any of the chaos he might have expected from traumatized 7-year-olds. "Dad," Danny said quietly, "what's going to happen to them?" It was the question Ryan had been avoiding all day, the reality he hadn't wanted to face. These girls needed permanent homes, legal guardians, stability that he wasn't sure he could provide. He was barely managing his own life and Danny's needs. Taking on 3 more children would require resources, financial, emotional, practical, that he simply didn't have. But as he watched Hope carefully tucking her elephant into the makeshift bed he'd created on the couch, as he listened to Grace reading a bedtime story to Faith in the gentle, nurturing voice of someone who had been taking care of others for far too long. Ryan realized something had already shifted in his thinking. The question wasn't whether he could afford to help these girls. The question was whether he could afford not to. By the end of the first week, the apartment had developed its own rhythm, as if the walls themselves had expanded to accommodate 3 additional heartbeats. Ryan found himself waking up earlier, not from stress, but from an eagerness to see what small miracles the day might bring. The girls had a way of transforming ordinary moments into something approaching magic. Grace had appointed herself the household organizer, creating systems that Ryan and Danny had never thought to implement. She arranged the shoes by the door in perfect pairs, sorted the mail into neat stacks, and even convinced Hope and Faith to help her create a chore chart using construction paper and Danny's markers. Her handwriting was careful and precise as she assigned tasks. Danny, trash cans; Faith, set table; Hope, feed fish when we get one; Grace, help with laundry. "We don't have a fish," Ryan pointed out, amused. "Not yet," Grace replied, with the confidence of someone who had learned to plan for better possibilities. But maybe someday. Faith had become the household's unofficial music director. Her grandmother's music box had sparked something in Danny that Ryan hadn't seen since before Sarah's death, a genuine interest in creating rather than just consuming. Together, they had discovered that the old piano keyboard in the apartment complex's community room still worked, and Faith had begun teaching Danny the simple melody from her music box, while he showed her how to pick out more complex songs by ear. "Listen to this, Dad," Danny called one evening, his fingers moving carefully across the keys while Faith hummed harmony beside him. The sound that emerged was tentative but beautiful. 2 young people finding their way through grief by making something lovely together. Hope had claimed the corner by the living room window as her special place, where she conducted elaborate tea parties with her elephant, Danny's bear, and an ever-growing collection of improvised guests made from socks and kitchen utensils. But more than that, she had become the household's emotional barometer, somehow sensing when someone needed extra comfort and appearing with silent hugs or whispered encouragement that seemed to come from an impossibly wise heart. The practical challenges were significant but manageable. Ryan had called his supervisor and explained the situation. 3 orphaned girls who needed temporary care while he worked with social services to find permanent placement. Mr. Henderson, a grandfather himself, had agreed to let Ryan adjust his schedule, starting work an hour later so he could get all 4 kids to school and daycare. Grace and Faith were enrolled in the local elementary school, where their matching faces and quiet intensity had quickly made them minor celebrities. Among their classmates, Hope was too young for regular school, but had been accepted into the daycare program at the community center, where she spent her days creating art projects that she proudly presented to the family each evening. The financial strain was real. 3 additional people meant grocery bills that made Ryan's eyes water, clothing expenses he hadn't budgeted for, and the constant small costs of raising young people in a world that seemed designed to separate parents from their money. But somehow, they made it work. Grace's careful attention to not wasting anything helped stretch resources. Faith's gentle encouragement convinced everyone to appreciate simple meals and activities that didn't cost money. And Hope's infectious joy made even peanut butter sandwiches feel like celebrations. More importantly, something was healing in Danny that Ryan had despaired of ever seeing again. His son had found purpose in being a big brother, responsibility that came not from adult expectations, but from his own recognition that these girls needed him. Danny's nightmares had decreased significantly, replaced by dreams he actually wanted to share. Stories of adventures where he and the triplets were explorers, inventors, or superheroes working together to solve problems and help people. Grace is really smart, Danny reported one evening while helping Ryan fold laundry. She figured out how to fix the broken drawer in the kitchen just by watching how you fix stuff. And Faith can remember any song after hearing it twice. And Hope can make anyone feel better just by being Hope. Ryan had noticed these things too, but hearing Danny articulate them with such pride and protectiveness made him realize how deeply his son had bonded with the girls. They weren't temporary house guests anymore. They were family, at least in Danny's mind, and increasingly in Ryan's heart as well. The emotional breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday evening 2 weeks after Ryan had found them at the cemetery. The girls had been living with them for 14 days, and Ryan had spent most of that time expecting someone from social services to call with permanent placement options, or for Harper Williams to finally respond to his messages, or for some other adult to step forward and take responsibility for Grace, Faith, and Hope's future. But instead of waiting for rescue, he found himself actively dreading the phone call that would take them away. The realization hit him while he was watching all 4 kids work together on a jigsaw puzzle, their heads bent over the coffee table in the lamplight while soft rain tapped against the windows. Grace was organizing pieces by color and pattern. Faith was humming while she worked. Hope was providing encouraging commentary for everyone's efforts, and Danny was quietly making sure each of his sisters, when had. He started thinking of them as sisters, got equal turns choosing which section to work on next. They looked like a family. They felt like a family. And for the first time since Sarah's death, Ryan's apartment felt like a home rather than just a place where he and Danny happened to sleep and eat between the more important business of life. "Dad," Grace said without looking up from the puzzle, "what happens if Harper never calls back?" The question hung in the air, more loaded than her casual tone suggested. Ryan could feel all 4 kids waiting for his answer, though none of them stopped working on the puzzle. "I don't know," Ryan said honestly. "What do you want to happen?" Grace finally looked up, her serious dark eyes meeting his. "I want to stay here with you and Danny, if that would be okay." Faith nodded without lifting her head from the puzzle pieces. "This feels like home. Like a real family," Hope added, holding up a corner piece triumphantly. Danny looked at Ryan with an expression that was part hope, part plea, part determination. "Can they stay, Dad? I mean, really stay?" Ryan thought about all the practical objections, the financial challenges, the legal complexities, the fact that going from a single father of 1 to a single father of 4 would require restructuring. His entire life, he thought about the small apartment that would feel even smaller with 5 people living in it permanently, about college funds he'd need to start and school activities he'd need to support, and all the ways his carefully managed budget would need to expand. But mostly, he thought about how alive the apartment felt with Grace's organizational systems and Faith's music and Hope's laughter echoing off the walls. He thought about Danny's transformation from a grieving, withdrawn boy into a protective, engaged big brother. He thought about bedtime stories read in whispered voices, about morning pancakes that tasted better when shared with people who were genuinely grateful for them, about the way even ordinary Tuesday evenings had become events worth celebrating. "Yeah," Ryan said quietly, "I think they can stay." The puzzle was abandoned as 4 young people launched themselves at him in a tangle of arms and excited chatter, and the kind of pure, uncomplicated joy that made every challenge they would face seem not just manageable, but worthwhile. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside Ryan's small apartment on Maple Street, something had taken root that no storm could wash away. The knock on the door came at 7:23 on a Tuesday morning, sharp and official in a way that immediately set Ryan's nerves on edge. He was in the middle of braiding Hope's hair, while Grace packed lunches and Faith helped Danny find his lost math homework, the kind of controlled chaos that had become their morning routine over the past 3 weeks. "I'll get it," Grace called, already moving toward the door with the efficient helpfulness that characterized everything she did. "Wait," Ryan said quickly, something instinctive making him want to intercept whatever was waiting on the other side. "Let me check first." Through the peephole, he saw a woman in a crisp navy suit holding a clipboard and briefcase, flanked by a uniformed police officer. Ryan's stomach dropped. He'd been expecting this visit, dreading it, but hoping somehow it wouldn't come. "Girls, go to your room for a minute," he said quietly. "Danny, take them back there, and maybe start on that art project you were talking about." "What's wrong?" Grace asked, her voice immediately tense with the kind of hypervigilance that came from a life where unexpected visitors often brought bad news. "Probably nothing," Ryan lied smoothly. "Just some grown-up stuff I need to handle. The woman at the door introduced herself as Margaret Peterson from Child Protective Services, and her expression was professionally neutral in a way that somehow felt more threatening than outright hostility would have been. "Mr. Collins," she began, consulting her clipboard, "we received a report that you're housing 3 minor children who are not legally in your custody. I'm here to conduct a welfare check and discuss the situation." Ryan's mind raced. Who had reported them? The school, maybe, when he'd enrolled Grace and Faith? The daycare center? Or perhaps Harper Williams had finally surfaced and decided she couldn't take the girls, but wanted to make sure someone was handling the situation properly. "The children are safe and well cared for," Ryan said, stepping aside to let the officials enter. "They've been living here temporarily while we tried to locate their mother's friend who was supposed to take them." Ms. Peterson's eyes swept over the apartment, taking inventory of the sleeping arrangements, the extra clothes folded on chairs, the clear signs that this was not a temporary housing situation, but an established living arrangement. "Mr. Collins, regardless of your intentions, you cannot simply decide to keep 3 orphaned children without going through proper legal channels." "I wasn't trying to keep them permanently," Ryan said, though even as the words left his mouth, he knew they weren't entirely true anymore. "Their mother died, they were abandoned at the funeral, and I couldn't leave them there in the rain." "That was 3 weeks ago," Ms. Peterson pointed out. "At what point did you plan to contact the appropriate authorities?" Ryan felt heat rising in his cheeks. The truth was, he had called social services multiple times in the first few days, but had been put on hold, transferred between departments, and told that emergency placement situations had a waiting list due to overcrowding in the foster system. Each day that passed had made it easier to rationalize keeping the girls a little longer, until temporary had somehow become indefinite. From the back bedroom came the sound of muffled voices. Grace trying to keep her sisters calm, while undoubtedly straining to hear what was happening in the living room. Ryan's heart ached thinking about how this conversation would affect them. They'd already lost their mother and been abandoned by the person who was supposed to care for them. Now, they were about to learn that their new sense of security was built on legally shaky ground. "Mr. Collins," Ms. Peterson continued, her tone becoming slightly less professional and more human, "I can see that you've provided good care for these children. The apartment is clean, they appear healthy and well-adjusted, and your neighbors have had nothing but positive things to say about the situation." "Our neighbors talk to you?" Ryan asked, surprised. "Mrs. Rodriguez downstairs mentioned that the girls are polite and helpful, always hold doors and say thank you. Mr. Thompson from across the hall said your son Danny seems much happier lately, and that all 4 children play quietly in the courtyard without causing trouble." She paused, consulting her notes. "These are good signs, Mr. Collins, but they don't change the legal reality." The police officer, who had remained silent during the exchange, stepped forward. "Sir, we're not here to arrest anyone or remove the children immediately. But the situation needs to be regularized through proper channels." "What does that mean exactly?" Ryan asked, though he suspected he already knew. Ms. Peterson opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder of documents. "It means the girls will need to be placed in emergency foster care while we begin the process of finding permanent homes for them. Given that they're triplets and have already experienced significant trauma, we'll try to keep them together, but I have to be honest. Finding a single placement for 3 children is extremely challenging." "You want to split them up?" Ryan's voice was sharper than he intended. "We want to find the best possible outcome for everyone involved," Ms. Peterson replied carefully. "These girls need stability, legal protection, and long-term security that you currently cannot provide without proper authorization." From the bedroom came a small crash, followed by Grace's voice saying, it's okay," in the soothing tone she used when one of her sisters was upset. Ryan realized they were listening to every word, understanding that their world was about to be disrupted again, just when they'd begun to feel safe. "How long do I have?" Ryan asked. "I can give you until the end of the week to make arrangements," Ms. Peterson said. "But Mr. Collins, you need to understand, even if you wanted to pursue legal guardianship or adoption, the process is lengthy and complex. Your financial situation, living space, single-parent status, and lack of prior experience with multiple children would all be factors in the evaluation." After they left, Ryan sat alone at the kitchen table while the children remained in the bedroom, ostensibly working on art projects, but actually processing what they'd overheard. The silence stretched on until finally Grace appeared in the doorway, her small face set in the expression of someone preparing to handle whatever came next. "Are we leaving?" she asked simply. Ryan looked at this 7-year-old girl who had been forced to grow up too fast, who had spent 3 weeks learning to trust him, only to discover that trust might have been misplaced. Behind her, Faith and Hope peered around the doorframe, while Danny stood protectively close to all 3 of his sisters. "I don't know," Ryan said honestly, "but I'm going to fight for you, all of you. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to figure it out." Grace nodded solemnly, as if this was exactly the answer she'd expected and hoped for. "Okay, what do we need to do?" In that moment, Ryan realized that the family he'd accidentally created was worth fighting for, regardless of the obstacles ahead. The question wasn't whether he could afford to take on the legal and financial challenges of officially becoming their guardian. The question was whether he could afford to let them go. Ryan didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat at his kitchen table surrounded by legal documents he'd printed from the internet, a yellow legal pad covered with his scratchy handwriting, and 3 cups of cold coffee that had grown increasingly bitter as the hours passed. The apartment was finally quiet. All 4 kids had eventually fallen asleep after a dinner conversation that carefully avoided the elephant in the room. But Ryan's mind was racing with plans, possibilities, and the growing realization that wanting to keep his accidental family together wasn't going to be enough. At 5:30 a.m., he called in sick to work again, knowing that Mr. Henderson's patience with his situation was probably wearing thin, but unable to focus on anything but the crisis at hand. By 6 a.m., he was on the phone with the first of what would be many legal aid organizations, trying to find someone who could explain his options without charging fees he couldn't afford. The answers he received were uniformly discouraging. Emergency. Guardianship required extensive background checks, home studies, financial documentation, and a court hearing that could take weeks to schedule. Even if he qualified, which several attorneys suggested was questionable given his modest income and lack of experience with multiple children, the process would likely take longer than the deadline Miss Peterson had given him. "Dad?" Danny appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for school despite the early hour. "Are you okay?" Ryan looked at his son, really looked at him and saw a boy who had been transformed over the past 3 weeks from a withdrawn, nightmare-plagued child into someone with purpose and confidence. Danny's eyes were clearer than they'd been since Sarah's death, his posture straighter, his voice stronger. The responsibility of being a big brother had given him something Ryan's desperate attempts at comfort never could, a reason to be brave for someone else. "I'm working on it, buddy," Ryan said. "How are the girls?" Grace is awake. She's been folding and refolding their clothes since about 5. Faith keeps winding her music box, but not letting it play all the way through. Hope. Danny's voice cracked slightly. Hope asked me if they were going to have to live somewhere that didn't allow stuffed animals. The image of Hope worrying about losing her elephant and Danny's bear, the 2 toys that had become symbols of their blended family, nearly broke Ryan's resolve. But instead of crumbling, something hardened inside him. These children had lost. Enough! They weren't going to lose each other, and they weren't going to lose the security they'd found in his home, not if he had anything to say about it. "Danny, I need you to do something important for me," Ryan said. "I need you to keep Grace, Faith, and Hope calm today while I make some phone calls. Can you handle that?" Danny straightened his shoulders. "Yes, sir." The first call Ryan made was to his late wife's sister, Jennifer, who lived 2 states away and whom he hadn't spoken to since Sarah's funeral. Jennifer was a successful real estate attorney with 2 children of her own, and while their relationship had always been cordial rather than close, she was the only person in his limited network who might have both the resources and the legal knowledge to help. "Ryan?" Jennifer's voice was surprised when she answered. "Is everything okay? Is Danny all right?" As Ryan explained the situation, he could hear Jennifer taking notes, asking the kinds of detailed questions that lawyers ask when they're trying to understand not just what happened, but what options might exist. When he finished, there was a long silence. "Ryan," she said finally, "what you've done for these girls is incredibly generous, but you're right that the legal situation is complicated. However," she paused, and Ryan could practically hear her shifting into professional mode. "There might be some things we can do to buy you time and strengthen your position." Jennifer explained that emergency guardianship applications could be expedited in cases where children were at risk of being separated or placed in unsuitable situations. She offered to help him prepare the paperwork, to serve as a character, witness, and most importantly, to provide a financial affidavit showing that he had family support if needed to care for 4 children. "I can't give you money regularly," she said bluntly, "but I can provide documentation that there's a safety net if you run into financial difficulties. And I can make some calls to family court in your area. I went to law school with a couple of people who might be able to expedite your hearing." The second call was to his supervisor, Mr. Henderson. Ryan had been dreading this conversation, knowing that he was asking for more flexibility than any employee should reasonably expect. But when he explained the situation, 3 orphaned triplets, a son who was thriving in his role as big brother, and a legal battle to keep the family together, Henderson surprised him. "Collins, you've been working here for 4 years, and you've never asked for special treatment even when your wife died, and you were struggling to raise Danny alone," Henderson said gruffly. "If you need adjusted hours to fight for those girls, you've got them. And if you need a letter saying you're a good employee and a decent man, I'll write that too." The third call was the hardest. Ryan dialed the number for Child Protective Services and asked to speak with Ms. Peterson directly. When she came on the line, her tone was professional, but not unkind. "Mr. Collins, I hope you're calling to discuss transition plans for the children." "Actually," Ryan said, his voice steadier than he felt, "I'm calling to inform you that I'm filing for emergency guardianship of Grace, Faith, and Hope Martinez. I have legal representation, financial support from family members, and documentation showing that removing these children from my home would be detrimental to their well-being." There was a pause. "Mr. Collins, that's certainly your right, but I have to tell you that the process will take time, I understand," Ryan interrupted. "But until a court rules otherwise, these girls are staying with me. They've lost their mother, been abandoned by the person who promised to care for them, and finally found stability in my home. I won't let them be shuffled through the system, just because I didn't file the right paperwork fast enough." When he hung up, Ryan felt something he hadn't experienced since Sarah's death, the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're fighting for the right thing, regardless of the odds. He wasn't just reacting to circumstances anymore, he was actively shaping them. That evening, as he helped Grace with her homework while Faith played piano and Hope orchestrated an elaborate tea party between her elephant and Danny's bear, Ryan realized that somewhere in the past 3 weeks, these children had stopped being a responsibility he'd accidentally acquired and had become the family he'd chosen to fight for. "Dad," Grace said quietly as he checked her math problems. "Thank you for not giving up on us." Ryan looked down at her serious little face, at the careful handwriting that showed how hard she worked at everything she did, at the trust in her eyes that he was determined never to betray. "Sweetheart," he said, "you're my family now. Families don't give up on each other." Outside, the October wind rattled the windows, but inside the small apartment on Maple Street, 5 people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances were discovering that sometimes the strongest families are the ones you choose rather than the ones you're born into. The courthouse hearing was scheduled for a gray November morning, exactly 3 weeks after Ms. Peterson's first visit. Ryan stood outside the imposing brick building at 8:45 a.m., wearing his only suit, the same one he'd worn to Sarah's funeral 2 years earlier, and carrying a manila folder thick with documents that represented his determination to keep his accidental family together. Grace, Faith, and Hope sat on a wooden bench nearby, dressed in their best clothes and speaking in the hushed tones that children instinctively adopt in serious places. Danny sat between Grace and Faith, his arm around Hope, all of them looking far too young to be involved in legal proceedings that would determine their future. Jennifer had driven in from 2 states away and stood beside Ryan, her professional. Confidence, a reassuring presence in the intimidating environment. Over the past 3 weeks, she had worked tirelessly to prepare their case, gathering character references, financial documentation, and a comprehensive report from the children's school counselor about their remarkable adjustment and progress. "Remember," Jennifer said quietly, "the judge is going to be most concerned about stability and the children's best interests. Don't get defensive if she asks hard questions about your finances or living situation. Just be honest about your commitment and the support systems you've put in place." The hearing room was smaller than Ryan had expected, with wooden paneling that made everything feel serious and formal. Judge Patricia Williams, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, reviewed the documents spread before her while everyone waited in tense silence. "Mr. Collins," Judge Williams began, "you're requesting emergency guardianship of 3 children who are not biologically related to you. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you've been caring for them for approximately 5 weeks without legal authorization?" Ryan felt his cheeks flush. "Yes, Your Honor. I found them abandoned at their mother's funeral, and I couldn't leave them there alone." Judge Williams nodded, making notes on her legal pad. "I've reviewed the reports from Child Protective Services, the children's school, and the various character references you've provided. I have to say, this is an unusual situation." She looked up at the children, who were sitting in the gallery with a court advocate who had been assigned to represent their interests. Grace, Faith, and Hope, would you like to tell me how you feel about living with Mr. Collins and Danny? Grace stood up with the careful dignity she brought to everything, her small hand smoothing down her skirt. Your Honor, Ryan saved us when nobody else wanted us. He makes sure we eat good food and do our homework and brush our teeth. Danny teaches us things and helps us when we're sad about Mama. We're a family now. Faith nodded earnestly. He lets me play music whenever I want, and he listens when I play songs for Mama. He doesn't get mad when Hope has bad dreams or when Grace worries too much about things. Hope stood up then, clutching her elephant. Ryan hugs like a daddy, she said simply, and Danny is the best big brother in the whole world. Judge Williams smiled slightly, the first break in her professional demeanor. I see. And how do you feel about the possibility of living somewhere else? The three girls exchanged glances, and Grace spoke for all of them. We don't want to live somewhere else. We want to stay with our family. Mr. Collins, Judge Williams continued, I'm going to be frank with you. Your financial situation is marginal for supporting 4 children. Your living space is adequate but cramped. You have no prior experience with multiple children or with children who have experienced trauma. Ryan's heart sank, but the judge wasn't finished. However, she continued, the evidence suggests that these children have thrived in your care. Their school reports show improved academic performance and social adjustment. The psychological evaluation indicates that they feel secure and loved. Most importantly, they clearly consider you and your son to be their family. She set down her papers and looked directly at Ryan. Mr. Collins, are you prepared for the long-term commitment this guardianship represents? These children will need emotional support as they continue to grieve their mother. They'll need college funds and wedding funds and all the financial and emotional resources that come with raising children to adulthood. This isn't a temporary arrangement. This is parenthood. Ryan stood up, feeling the weight of 5 weeks of sleepless nights, financial worry, and overwhelming love. Your Honor, 5 weeks ago, I was a single father who could barely manage raising my own son. These girls didn't just need a home, they gave me a reason to be better than I thought I could be. Danny didn't just get 3 sisters, he became the kind of big brother who makes me proud every single day. We're not the same people we were before we found each other. He paused, looking back at the 4 children who were watching him with complete trust. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I can't promise we'll never struggle financially, or that I'll always know the right thing to say when they're hurting. But I can promise that these girls will never doubt that they're loved, that they're wanted, and that they have a home with us for as long as they need one. Judge Williams was quiet for a long moment, reviewing her notes one final time. Finally, she looked up with what might have been the beginning of a smile. Guardianship granted, she said, bringing down her gavel with a decisive crack that echoed through the small courtroom. The next few minutes were a blur of paperwork, congratulations from Jennifer, and 4 children launching themselves at Ryan in a tangle of arms and excited whispers. But the moment that would stay with him forever came later. As they walked down the courthouse steps into the November sunshine, Grace slipped her small hand into his and looked up with an expression that was part relief, part gratitude, and part something deeper. The look of someone who had finally found her place in the world. Are we really officially a family now? She asked. Ryan squeezed her hand and looked at Danny walking ahead with Faith and Hope, all 3 of them chattering excitedly about celebrating with ice cream despite the cold weather. He thought about the apartment that would need to be rearranged, again to accommodate everyone more permanently, about the financial planning he'd need to do for 4 college educations, about all the challenges and joys that lay ahead. Yeah, sweetheart, he said. We really, officially are. That evening, they had a family meeting around the kitchen table, their first official family meeting as legally recognized relatives. Grace had prepared an agenda on lined notebook paper, new house rules, chore schedule, Christmas plans, and what we call each other now. The last item sparked the most discussion. The girls had been calling Ryan by his first name, which had felt appropriate when they were temporary house guests, but now seemed insufficient for their new relationship. "What do you want to call me?" Ryan asked. The triplets looked at each other, having one of their silent conversations that still amazed him. Finally, Hope spoke up. "Can we call you Dad, like Danny does?" Ryan felt his throat tighten. "I would be honored." And with that simple exchange, the transformation was complete. They weren't a single father and his son helping 3 orphaned girls anymore. They were a family of 5, legally and emotionally united, ready to face whatever came next together. The December snow fell gently outside the windows of their new 3-bedroom apartment across town, a place that felt impossibly spacious after months of creative sleeping arrangements in the cramped 2-bedroom on Maple Street. Ryan stood in the doorway of what the girls had dubbed the sister room, watching as Grace carefully arranged their shared bookshelf while Faith tuned the small keyboard they'd found at a garage sale, and Hope conducted a serious tea party with an expanded cast of stuffed animals. The move had been made possible by a combination of factors that still felt miraculous to Ryan. His promotion to shop supervisor at Henderson's Auto Repair came with a significant salary increase. Mr. Henderson had apparently been planning it for months, but had accelerated the timeline when he learned about Ryan's expanded family. Jennifer had connected him with a family friend who was renting out a recently renovated apartment at below-market rates to the Wright family. And the girls themselves had insisted on contributing to their new living situation by taking on age-appropriate responsibilities that made the household run more smoothly than Ryan had ever imagined possible. Danny had claimed the 2nd bedroom, which he decorated with a combination of his old soccer posters and new art projects created collaboratively with his sisters. The walls were covered with their shared creations, elaborate drawings of their family, carefully constructed paper airplanes suspended from the ceiling, and a timeline of their family history that began with a drawing of a cemetery and ended with 5 stick figures standing in front of a house labeled home. The transformation in all 4 children had been remarkable, but perhaps most noticeable in Danny. Ryan often caught himself marveling at the confident, nurturing young man his son had become. Danny now woke up before his alarm each morning to help Grace with her perfectionist tendencies around organizing everyone's school clothes, to listen to Faith practice new songs on her keyboard, and to help Hope find whichever stuffed animal had gone missing during the night. The nightmares that had plagued him since Sarah's death had virtually disappeared, replaced by dreams he actually wanted to share at breakfast. "Dad, look what Faith figured out," Danny called from the living room, where he and Faith were working together at the keyboard. She can play Happy Birthday with her left hand and the melody from her music box with her right hand at the same time. Ryan paused his dinner preparations to listen as Faith demonstrated her newfound skill, her small fingers moving confidently across the keys while she hummed along. The music filled the apartment with something that felt like celebration. Even on an ordinary Tuesday evening, Grace appeared at his elbow, having appointed herself his sous chef for most meals. "Do you think Mama would be proud of how good Faith is getting at piano?" she asked quietly. Ryan had learned that the girls still spoke about their mother regularly, but now with a warmth that honored her memory rather than the desperate grief that had characterized their early weeks together. It was Grace who had suggested they create a special photo album of Sofia Martinez, using pictures they'd found in her few belongings, combined with new photos of the girls doing things they thought would make their mother happy. "I think your Mama would be incredibly proud of all of you," Ryan said, handing Grace a wooden spoon to stir the pasta sauce. "You've grown so much, and you've taken such good care of each other." "And you've taken good care of all of us," Grace replied, with the matter-of-fact wisdom that characterized most of her observations. The evening routine had evolved into something that felt both structured and organic. After dinner, which was always eaten together at the kitchen table, Danny would help with cleanup while the girls worked on homework in the living room. Ryan had learned to move between them, checking math problems with Grace, listening to Faith read aloud, and helping Hope with the pre-K workbooks that were preparing her for kindergarten the following year. Bedtime had become an elaborate ritual, involving multiple stories, the nightly playing of Faith's music box, and a rotation system that ensured each child got individual time with Ryan before lights out. Tonight, as he tucked Hope into her bed, a real twin bed with a frame and everything, not the makeshift couch arrangement they'd started with, she looked up at him with the kind of contentment that made all the challenges of the past few months seem worthwhile. "Dad," she said, still getting used to the word, but using it with increasing confidence. "Are we rich now?" Ryan smiled, thinking about their budget spreadsheet that still required careful management, but now included line items for piano lessons, school activities, and even modest college savings accounts for all 4 children. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart? We have our own rooms and enough food, and Danny has new soccer cleats, and Faith got her keyboard, and Grace has a real desk for homework." Hope counted these luxuries on her small fingers. "And we all have you and Danny and each other." "You know what?" Ryan said, kissing her forehead. "I think you're absolutely right. We are rich." As he turned off the lights and headed toward his own room, Ryan paused in the hallway to look at the photo collage that had become the centerpiece of their new home. Pictures of all 5 of them at various stages of becoming a family, the first. Tentative photos from those early weeks when no one was quite sure how to pose together, mixed with recent shots where they looked completely natural as a unit. His favorite was a candid shot Jennifer had taken during their celebration dinner. After the guardianship hearing, Ryan was helping Hope cut her food while simultaneously listening to something Grace was saying. Faith was showing Danny something on her phone, and all of them were laughing. They looked like what they had become. People who belonged together, who had found in each other exactly what they'd been missing without even knowing they were looking for it. The apartment was quiet now, filled with the peaceful sounds of 5 people sleeping safely under the same roof. Ryan lay in his own bed, also a real bed with a frame, another luxury made possible by their improved circumstances, and mentally reviewed the day's small victories and tomorrow's responsibilities. Grace had a math test she was nervous about, but she'd been studying for a week, and Ryan had no doubt she'd do well. Faith had piano lessons after school, something she looked forward to all week. Hope had show and tell, for which she'd chosen to bring the photo album they'd made of Sophia Martinez because she wanted to tell her class about her first mom and her second dad. Danny had soccer practice, and he'd been selected for the traveling team, an honor that filled Ryan with pride and required some budget juggling, but nothing they couldn't handle. These were the concerns of a normal family. School, performances and extracurricular activities, grocery lists and permission slips. The ordinary challenges of raising 4 children who were growing and learning and becoming themselves within the safety of a home where they knew they were loved. 6 months ago, Ryan had been a struggling single father who felt like he was failing at the most important job of his life. Now he was a father of 4 who woke up each morning eager to see what the day would bring, who went to sleep each night grateful for the chaos and joy that filled his home. Sometimes miracles don't announce themselves with fanfare. Sometimes they arrive in the form of 3 small girls standing in the rain, waiting for someone to remember they exist. And sometimes, in the process of saving someone else, you discover that you were the one who needed saving all along. Spring arrived early that year, as if the world itself was eager to celebrate new beginnings. Ryan stood on the small balcony of their apartment, watching as Grace, Faith, Hope and Danny played in the courtyard below, their laughter floating up through the warm April air like music made visible. It had been 6 months since the guardianship hearing, 8 months since that grey October day when he'd found 3 little girls crying at their mother's grave. The transformation hadn't been without its challenges. There had been sleepless nights when Hope's grief manifested in nightmares about losing another parent, difficult conversations when Grace's perfectionism threatened to overwhelm her 7-year-old emotional capacity, and moments when Faith's quiet sadness seemed too deep for music to reach. Danny had struggled with the adjustment too, learning to share not just space and attention, but also the role of the one who needed taking care of, that he'd occupied since Sarah's death. But what struck Ryan most was how completely they had all become themselves, within the safety of their unconventional family. Grace had channeled her need for control into leadership skills that amazed her teachers, organizing school fundraisers and peer mentoring programs with the same systematic approach she brought to household management. Faith had discovered that her musical gifts extended far beyond her grandmother's music box, composing simple melodies that captured emotions she couldn't always express in words. Hope had revealed herself to be an artist, creating elaborate drawings and stories that showed an imagination as vast as her capacity for joy. And Danny, Ryan's heart swelled with pride every time he thought about the young man his son was becoming. The withdrawn, nightmare-plagued boy who had sat silently in the car that day at the cemetery had evolved into someone who approached challenges with confidence, who stood up for classmates who were struggling, who came home from school each day eager to share his experiences with sisters who hung on his every word. "Dad," Hope's voice called from below, "come see what we made." Ryan made his way downstairs to find all 4 children gathered around an elaborate chalk masterpiece they'd created on the courtyard pavement. It was a family portrait of sorts, but rendered in the abstract style that Hope favored, swirls of color that somehow captured the energy and emotion of their household better than any realistic drawing could have. "This blue part is you," Hope explained, pointing to a section of chalk that seemed to spiral outward in protective circles. "Because you keep us safe, and you're always there. And this yellow part is Danny," Faith added, indicating a burst of sunshine-colored lines that connected to every other element in the drawing. "Because he makes everything brighter." Grace pointed to 3 intertwined sections of pink, purple, and green. "This is us sisters, because we're separate, but also together." "What's this part?" Ryan asked, indicating a section that seemed to shimmer with silver and white. "That's Mama," Grace said simply. "She's not gone. She's still part of our family, just in a different way." The evening routine had evolved into something that felt both structured and organic. After dinner, which was always eaten together, at the kitchen table, Danny would help with cleanup while the girls worked on homework in the living room. Ryan had learned to move between them, checking math problems with Grace, listening to Faith read aloud, and helping Hope with the pre-K workbooks that were preparing her for kindergarten the following year. That night, as he tucked Hope into her bed, a real twin bed with a frame, not the makeshift couch arrangement they'd started with, she looked up at him with the kind of contentment that made all the challenges of the past few months seem worthwhile. "Dad," she said, still getting used to the word but using it with increasing confidence, "are we rich now?" Ryan smiled, thinking about their budget spreadsheet that still required careful management, but now included line items for piano lessons, school activities, and even modest college savings accounts for all 4 children. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart? We have our own rooms and enough food, and Danny has new soccer cleats, and Faith got her keyboard, and Grace has a real desk for homework." Hope counted these luxuries on her small fingers. "And we all have you and Danny and each other." "You know what?" Ryan said, kissing her forehead. "I think you're absolutely right. We are rich." As he turned off the lights and headed toward his own room, Ryan paused in the hallway to look at the photo collage that had become the centerpiece of their new home. Pictures of all 5 of them at various stages of becoming a family. The first, tentative photos from those early weeks when no one was quite sure how to pose together, mixed with recent shots where they looked completely natural as a unit. His favorite was a candid shot Jennifer had taken during their celebration dinner. After the guardianship hearing, Ryan was helping Hope cut her food while simultaneously listening to something Grace was saying. Faith was showing Danny something on her phone, and all of them were laughing. They looked like what they had become, people who belonged together, who had found in each other exactly what they'd been missing without even knowing they were looking for it. The apartment was quiet now, filled with the peaceful sounds of 5 people sleeping safely under the same roof. These were the concerns of a normal family: school performances and extracurricular activities, grocery lists and permission slips. The ordinary challenges of raising 4 children who were growing and learning and becoming themselves within. The safety of a home where they knew they were loved. 6 months ago, Ryan had been a struggling single father who felt like he was failing at the most important job of his life. Now he was a father of 4 who woke up each morning eager to see what the day would bring, who went to sleep each night, grateful for the chaos and joy that filled his home. 1 year later, Ryan stood in the same cemetery where everything had begun, but this time he wasn't alone. Grace, Faith, Hope, and Danny surrounded him at Sofia Martinez's grave, each carrying something meaningful. Grace held a bouquet of fresh flowers from the school garden she now helped maintain. Faith carried her music box, ready to play their Mother's Lullaby one more time. Hope clutched a drawing she'd made, a portrait of Sophia surrounded by angels and butterflies. Danny held a letter he'd written, thanking a woman he'd never met for raising daughters who had taught him what it meant to be a true big brother. The headstone looked different now. Ryan had arranged to have it upgraded, adding the words, "Beloved, Mother of Grace, Faith, and Hope," and a small engraving of a music note, Faith's suggestion. But more than the physical changes, the entire energy of this place felt transformed. Where once there had been abandonment and despair, now there was remembrance and gratitude. "Should we tell her about everything that's happened?" Grace asked, kneeling beside the headstone with the natural reverence of someone who understood that love doesn't end with death. "I think she already knows," Faith said softly, winding her music box and letting the familiar melody drift across the quiet cemetery. "But let's tell her anyway." They took turns sharing updates, with Sofia Martinez speaking to her as if she were sitting right there with them. Grace reported her straight A's and her election as class president. Faith talked about her piano recital and the song she'd composed called Mama's Lullaby. Hope showed off her latest artwork and explained her theory that butterflies were messages from heaven. Danny, with the earnestness that characterized everything he did, read his letter aloud, thanking Sophia for trusting them with her daughters and promising to always be the best big brother he could be. Ryan listened to his children, and they were definitively his children now, in every way that mattered, and marveled at how naturally they had learned to honor their past while embracing their present. These weren't children who had been damaged by loss. They were children who had been strengthened by love, who understood that families could be built as well as born, who carried their first mother's memory forward while fully accepting their second father's devotion. "What do you want to tell her, Dad?" Hope asked, slipping her small hand into his. Ryan knelt beside the grave, thinking about everything he wanted to say to the woman who had given him the greatest gift of his life by trusting him with her daughters. "Thank you," he said simply. "Thank you for raising 3 incredible little girls who taught me that love multiplies instead of divides. Thank you for giving me the chance to be their father and for helping Danny become the amazing big brother he was meant to be. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply show up when someone needs you." As they walked back to the car, a slightly larger sedan that accommodated 5 people more comfortably, Ryan reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this point. The challenges hadn't disappeared. If anything, raising 4 children required constant problem-solving, financial creativity, and more patience than he'd known he possessed. But every difficulty was balanced by moments of pure joy that made the struggles not just worthwhile, but meaningful. Just last week, Hope had lost her first tooth and insisted on writing a thank you note to the Tooth Fairy that included a drawing of their entire family. Faith had been selected for the school's advanced music program and wanted to perform a piece she'd written for Sophia at the spring concert. Grace had organized a school-wide charity drive for children in foster care, raising over $1,000 and donating dozens of toys and books. Danny had made varsity soccer as a sophomore and been chosen as team captain, an honor he accepted by dedicating the season to "My 3 sisters who taught me what it means to protect the people you love." That evening, after dinner and homework, and the elaborate bedtime routine that had evolved over the past year, Ryan found himself in his room with a notebook he'd started keeping, not quite a diary, but a record of moments he wanted to remember. He turned to a fresh page and began to write, "1-year anniversary of finding the girls. Visited Sophia's grave today. Grace said something that stopped me in my tracks. Do you think first mom and second dad planned this somehow? The idea that Sarah and Sophia might have conspired from wherever they are now to bring us all together. I can't prove it, but I can't dismiss it either. Some things are too perfectly imperfect to be coincidence." His phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Saw the photos from today's cemetery visit. Those kids are so lucky to have you, but I think you're the lucky one. Sarah would be so proud of the father you've become." Ryan smiled, typing back, "I'm the luckiest man alive. Thanks for helping me fight for them." The response came quickly. "You didn't need help fighting for them. You just needed someone to handle the paperwork while you did what you were always going to do, love them unconditionally." As he prepared for sleep, Ryan made his nightly rounds through the apartment. In the girls' room, he found Grace reading by her bedside lamp while Faith and Hope slept peacefully. She looked up as he appeared in the doorway. "Good book," he whispered. "It's about families," Grace replied softly. "Different kinds of families that don't look like what people expect, but work perfectly anyway." "Sounds familiar," Ryan said, kissing her forehead. "Sleep well, sweetheart." In Danny's room, he found his son organizing his soccer gear for tomorrow's game. "You ready for the championship?" Ryan asked. Danny grinned. "Are you kidding? I've got 3 sisters cheering for me. We can't lose." As Ryan settled into his own bed, he thought about the story he would tell if someone asked him how his family came to be. It wasn't a story about a hero rescuing 3 orphan children, though that's how some people chose to see it. It wasn't a story about finding replacement people to fill the holes left by loss, though that's what he'd feared it might become. It was, instead, a story about recognition, about 5 people who had been incomplete in different ways, discovering that their missing pieces matched perfectly. It was about learning that families can be chosen as well as born, that love multiplies rather than divides when shared generously, and that sometimes the most important decision you'll ever make happens in an instant, when your heart recognizes something your head hasn't processed yet. The phone rang, interrupting his reflection. It was an unknown number, but something prompted him to answer. "Mr. Collins, this is Harper Williams. I know it's been over a year, and I know I failed Sophia and her girls when they needed me most. I've been dealing with my own family crisis, but I wanted you to know that I heard about what you did for Grace, Faith, and Hope. Sophia would be so grateful. Those girls couldn't have found a better father. Thank you for being the person I couldn't be when they needed someone most." Ryan felt the final piece of their origin story click into place. "They're exactly where they belong," he said gently. "Thank you for letting me know." After hanging up, Ryan lay in the darkness listening to the quiet sounds of his household, Faith's music box playing its gentle melody in the distance, Hope talking softly to her stuffed animals, Grace turning pages in her book, Danny adjusting his pillow in the next room. The sounds of a family settling into sleep, safe and loved, and exactly where they belonged. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and joys. Grace had a student council meeting, Faith had piano lessons, Hope had her first kindergarten screening, and Danny had a championship soccer game where Ryan would stand on the sidelines cheering loudly enough to embarrass his teenage son in the way that parents are supposed to do. There would be homework battles and bedtime negotiations, grocery shopping and laundry folding, all the ordinary responsibilities of raising 4 children who were growing and changing every day. But tonight, in the quiet darkness of his room, in an apartment filled with people who had chosen to love each other, Ryan Collins fell asleep with gratitude in his heart and the absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Sometimes healing doesn't knock on the door. It arrives wrapped in tears, clutching worn teddy bears, standing lost, at the edge of everything they've ever known. And sometimes, when you open your heart to someone else's crisis, you discover that salvation works both ways. The miracles don't always announce themselves with fanfare. Sometimes they arrive on ordinary Tuesday afternoons, disguised as someone else's need, wrapped in the kind of love that transforms not just individual lives, but entire definitions of what family can mean. If stories like this speak to your heart, if they remind you that kindness creates ripples we can't always see, if they inspire you to look for your own opportunities to open doors for people who need them, then perhaps the real miracle isn't just what happened to Ryan, Danny, Grace, Faith, and Hope. Perhaps the real miracle is knowing that somewhere, right now, there are families being formed and lives being transformed by ordinary people who choose extraordinary compassion. People who understand that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply show up when someone needs you to be there. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Where in the world are you watching from, and what part of this story stayed with you the most? Have you ever experienced or witnessed an act of kindness that changed everything? Share your story with our community, because every act of love, no matter how small it might seem, has the power to create miracles we can't even imagine. And if you'd like more stories filled with hope, second chances, and the kind of love that arrives when you least expect it, we'd be honored to have you subscribe and join our family of people who believe in the transformative power of human kindness. The world needs more people like Ryan Collins. Not perfect people, just people willing to show up when it matters most. People who understand that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money or advice or solutions, but simply the knowledge that they're not alone. Be that person. The world is waiting for your kindness. 5 years later, the high school graduation cap felt strange on Danny's head as he adjusted it one more time, looking at himself in the mirror of their now 4-bedroom house, the one they'd been able to buy 3 years ago, when Ryan's promotion to shop manager had finally made home ownership possible. The modest 2-story home on Elm Street had a front yard where Hope could practice her cartwheels, a basement where Faith had set up her music studio, and enough space for Grace to have her own room where she could organize to her heart's content. "Danny!" Grace's voice called from downstairs, carrying the familiar tone of someone who had appointed herself the family's schedule coordinator. "Your sisters want to take pictures with you before we leave." Your sisters. Even after 5 years, those words still filled Danny with a warmth that had nothing to do with the June sunshine streaming through his bedroom window. At 18, he stood 6 feet tall and had grown into the kind of young man who carried himself with quiet confidence, the star of the soccer team, class salutatorian, and the big brother who still helped Hope with her homework every night, and never missed one of Faith's piano recitals. Downstairs, he found the three girls waiting in the living room, dressed in their best clothes for his graduation ceremony. Grace, now 12, had developed into the family's natural leader, student body president at her middle school, organizer of charity drives, and still the one who made sure everyone's clothes were laid out the night before important events. Faith, also 12, had grown quieter and more thoughtful over the years, her musical talents blossoming into something extraordinary that had earned her a scholarship to a prestigious summer music program. Hope, now 11, remained the family's Art, an artist whose drawings covered the refrigerator and whose infectious joy could brighten anyone's darkest day. "Group hug," Hope announced, launching herself at Danny with the enthusiasm that characterized everything she did. Grace and Faith quickly joined in, creating the kind of tangle of arms and laughter that had become their signature family embrace. Ryan appeared in the doorway, holding his camera and wearing the expression of proud amazement that had become his default setting over the past 5 years. At 37, he looked older than his years, but in a good way, the kind of weathered contentment that came from a life lived purposefully. His hair was graying at the temples, and laugh lines had appeared around his eyes from years of bedtime stories, soccer games, piano recitals, and art shows. Art shows. "Okay, everyone," Ryan said, though he was smiling as he said it. "We need to leave in 10 minutes or we're going to be late to Danny's graduation." As they piled into their minivan, a practical purchase that had replaced the sedan 2 years earlier, Ryan caught Danny's eye in the rearview mirror. "You ready for this, son?" Danny nodded, then looked at his 3 sisters who were chattering excitedly about the ceremony, about the party they'd planned for afterward, about all the ways they intended to embarrass him with their enthusiastic cheering. "Yeah, Dad, I'm ready." The graduation ceremony was held in the school's football stadium, with families scattered across the bleachers under a perfect blue sky. When Danny's name was called and he walked across the stage to receive his diploma, the cheers from his family section were unmistakably the loudest in the stadium. Grace had made a banner that read, "Danny Collins, best big brother ever." Faith had her phone out, recording every second. Hope was jumping up and down, waving a foam finger she'd decorated with glitter, and Ryan was crying without shame, thinking about a broken man and a grieving boy who had sat in a car in a cemetery 5 years ago, never imagining that their lives were about to be transformed by 3 little girls who needed them just as much as they needed love. After the ceremony, as they gathered for photos on the school lawn, Danny pulled Ryan aside. "Dad, I want you to know something," Danny said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had thought carefully about what he wanted to say. "I know you think you saved Grace, Faith, and Hope that day at the cemetery, but they saved us too. They saved me from being stuck in my grief forever, and they saved you from forgetting how to hope for better things." Ryan felt his throat tighten. "Danny, I'm not finished," Danny continued, grinning. "I also want you to know that watching you become their father taught me what kind of man I want to be. Someone who shows up when people need him. Someone who chooses love even when it's complicated. Someone who understands that the best families are the ones you build with intention and daily acts of kindness." As Danny headed off to college in the fall, with plans to study education so he could work with children who needed advocates, Ryan knew that the lessons learned in their unconventional family would ripple forward in ways they might never fully understand. That evening, after the graduation party and the cleanup and the emotional goodbyes to Danny's high school friends, the 5 of them sat on their front porch as the sun set over Elm Street. Hope was sketching in her art pad, Faith was composing a melody on her phone. Grace was making lists of everything they needed to accomplish before Danny left for college. And Danny was telling them stories about his plans to change the world through education. Ryan looked at his family, chosen, fought for, and loved into existence through a combination of chance, choice, and unwavering commitment, and felt the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you've lived up to the best version of yourself. Sometimes miracles arrive wearing rain-soaked funeral dresses and clutching stuffed elephants. Sometimes they transform not just the people who receive them, but everyone who witnesses the simple power of choosing love over fear, hope over despair, and family over biology. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, those miracles grow up to change the world, one act of kindness at a time. The Collins family had started with 5 broken pieces that somehow fit together perfectly. Now they were sending their first piece out into the world, confident that the love they'd built together would continue to multiply in ways they could never have imagined on that grey October day when everything began. The miracle wasn't just that they'd found each other. The miracle was that they'd learned to become exactly who they were meant to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.